خوان صورت مسئله رو تغییر بدن این 100% مغرضانه و خباثت آلوده.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has backed the re-election of President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and issues a warning that protests against the country's disputed election results must end. Iranian paramilitary forces have cracked down on the demonstrations, killing several protesters. We'll go to Tehran to speak with a reporter with the Toronto Globe and Mail. He was arrested, detained, and beaten by Iranian security forces. Iran's supreme leader has issued a warning that protests against the country's disputed presidential election results must end. In his first public remarks after days of demonstrations, Ayatollah Khamenei denied any possibility that last week's vote had been rigged and defended President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad as the rightful winner of the election. Demonstrators calling for a new election had earlier vowed to stage fresh protests on Saturday. Hundreds of thousands of silent protesters flooded the streets of Tehran yesterday, despite a continuing government crackdown. Several protesters wore black and carried candles and white flowers to mourn the demonstrators who were killed by Iranian paramilitary and security forces in the past week. The leading opposition candidate, Mir Hossein Mousavi, addressed the protesters Thursday, asking them to prepare for a major march on Saturday. Meanwhile, President Ahmadinejad appears to have backed down from his initial remarks, insulting the protesters, saying, quote, "Every single Iranian is valuable. We like everyone." But at the same time, the Iranian government continues to arrest prominent reformists and associates of the opposition candidates, including 26-year-old Mohammad Reza Jalehpour, the top strategist for Mousavi. Well, to find out more about some of the conditions that those arrested are facing and the crackdown on protesters, journalists, and opposition leaders, we're joined on the phone from Tehran by Toronto Globe and Mail reporter George McLeod. On Sunday, he was arrested, detained, and beaten by Iranian security forces. George McLeod, welcome to Democracy Now! Can you describe what happened to you this weekend?
Well, I was approached by a police officer who grabbed me. He was a riot police officer, and he took me. I was taken to an outdoor location near the Interior Ministry, and I was hauled off the bike and grabbed by the neck and beaten and hit by about, I don't know, 5 officers, I would say, and then I was hauled back onto the bike and taken to the Interior Ministry and taken by the arm, with my arm behind my back, into the basement of the car park, down a flight of dark stairs, and held there and questioned. And I could see in that area, I could see about 100 or so demonstrators who were crouched down with their hands behind their heads. So this was some sort of a holding facility. And then I was released. So I had a few minor injuries, but I consider myself quite lucky compared to what could have happened.
And the numbers at this point of people that you understand who've been detained, of people that have been killed?
We really don't know that yet. We know that about 400 were arrested the other night, excuse me. I mean, it would be in the thousands, and we'll never know the real number because, I mean, as I saw with my experience at the Interior Ministry, I was taken in and I was never charged or even accused of anything. So with the way the system works here, they can detain you without calling it an arrest. They can just hold you. So I don't think we'll ever know how many have been arrested, but I'm sure it's well into the thousands.
Mm-hmm. And your assessment of the anti-election results protesters, the people who are supporting Mousavi and other candidates, is this about the elections or about the government overall?
Well, at first it was about the elections, but I think over the week that's changed, and what I'm hearing from people on the ground is that this is more about the government and about the system and about the way that this country works. And I think the goals of this movement have changed and they've broadened. And I think probably by, if not even tonight, then tomorrow we're going to see some very, very serious protests occurring in the capital. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw rioting tonight, but I don't know that for a fact.
And how are you in Tehran right now, George McLeod, since foreign reporters have been banned?
Well, the number of reporters is dwindling. I just spoke with an American TV crew, and their cameraman is down at the police station, and they've basically been told that they have to leave. And that there's another radio station, television station in the UK that's being thrown out as well. And on top of that, we've been told that we can't leave our offices, we can't look at demonstrations, and that if we do, the authorities are not responsible for what happens to us. So that's basically, I've never reported in an environment as hostile as this in terms of the authorities.
And how are they enforcing this? And it's not just foreign reporters like you coming from Canada, but it's also Iranian reporters who are reporting for foreign news organizations. How do they enforce this?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say it's much, much worse for Iranian reporters because, well, with my experience, I'm convinced I wouldn't have gotten out of there if I wasn't a foreigner. So the big issue is how Iranians are treated. And what they do is, well, they throw you out of the country. Perhaps they throw you in jail for a little while. And they said that if it's at a riot or a demonstration, you could potentially be physically harmed. So it's serious. I was just walking down the street near the prayer meeting, and I was briefly detained and searched. My computer they looked at my computer hard drive on my laptop. They looked at my photos. They asked me if I work for a security service. So it's very bad. The grassroots have been told that the foreign media is stoking these protests. They've been told that we are basically the enemy. So it's not a good situation.
And the Basij, the paramilitary forces that are known for have killed a number of people?
I had a little run-in with them about 3 nights ago, and they are absolutely terrifying. This is a sort of a quasi-legal, hardline Islamic group that is basically above the law because they're said to be following religious law. And they basically roam the streets after 10 o'clock at night armed with chains, sticks, belts, anything they can get their hands on, and they beat anybody they suspect of being protesters. They search cars, set up checkpoints, and I personally find them terrifying. They pulled me off a bike the other day and eventually let me go, but it's not a good situation at nighttime here.
And the people who are protesting, can you describe the silent protests of the young people, what that means?
Well, a lot of it is just to prevent to prevent any agitation from the authorities. They believe that if they're silent, that will reduce the pressure from the authorities. The one yesterday, of course, there was the added issue that it was a commemorative ceremony for the deaths of 8 protesters. So I think that what the protesters are trying to make very clear right now through their silence is that this is a peaceful movement. This is not a violent insurrection.
George McLeod, I want to thank you for being with us. Freelance correspondent for the Canadian newspaper The Globe and Mail was briefly detained, is now back out on the street. This is Democracy Now!